This is The Premise, and I'm your host,
Chad Thompson. Chad Thompson's the host.
I'm the host. I'm Jeniffer Thompson.
And I'm Chad Thompson, the host.
Today on The Premise, Chad and I are talking to Marika Flatt, co-founder of PR by the Book, an internationally known book publicity firm with more than 15 years in the biz. She is also an educator, a travel writer, wife. In fact, her husband is her business partner. Shout out to Doug. And she is a mother of 3 beautiful kids. Marika, welcome to The Premise.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me. So much fun. What a nice shout out.
Yeah, well, I had to give a shout out to Doug. He taught me how to dance years ago. We were in Texas. Do you remember that? We were at some bar. I think it was called the White Horse.
Yes. That place is so fun. But I haven't been back since.
There was this awesome hillbilly band. It was so good. And there was a woman in there and she had a possum with her, like in a baby Bjorn thing.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And Doug and I think Doug and I were at the bar getting everyone drinks, and we're like, that woman has a possum in a baby Bjorn. That's different. Weird. Yeah, exactly. It was. But Doug taught me how to dance. Swing dance? Is that the right phrase? Is it swing?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
And he's an excellent dancer. Shout out to Doug and his 2-step dancing ways.
That's right. He swept me off my feet in that fashion.
Did he really? Tell us more.
We would go dancing a lot in college where I met him. So yeah, I liked that he knew how to dance.
And you went to Texas A&M, right?
That's right.
Cool. Well, that's one of the questions I wanted to ask you is after college, you started at a boutique literary firm. Mm-hmm. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So, I just feel like I was given the greatest opportunity because it was a very small company. It was basically the owner and another publicist and myself when I was hired. And so in that situation, it's really very much sink or swim. You either learn it quickly and you learn everything, you're cross-trained in every part of the business. So you either, like I said, sink or swim. And so I just feel very lucky that I had that experience because I was able to learn from a very talented publicist who owned that company, who I'm still friends with today. And, she eventually ended up selling her business and getting out of book publicity because she had other passions that she wanted to pursue. And so it was shortly after she sold the business that I founded PR by the Book and, left that company because it was just very different from what it had started out being in that kind of evolution. And it all worked out perfectly because I was able to get in and learn a lot. I mean, I knew the media because I had experience behind the scenes with media outlets up to that point. And I knew that I loved books and loved telling people about books. And so it was really a neat combination of learning, oh, wow, there's a thing called a book publicist.
Right.
And I just really lucked out. Right place at the right time.
Did you always know that you wanted to go into, well, actually, what did you want to be when you were in elementary school?
Well, I'll tell you, up until the time I was just about to graduate from college, I was planning to go into TV. And
really?
I wanted to be on the street as a reporter. I mean, I would have been happy to be an anchor also, but I loved the process of covering the story and interviewing people and being in front of the camera and all of that. But I had gotten several pieces of experience leading up to that point from being a host of a little show on a cable network called The Teen Report when I was 18. And that led into a similar show on the same channel called The College Report. And then I interned at an NBC affiliate. I worked as a production assistant at another TV channel where I was going to school. And so I had a lot of experience kind of seeing behind the scenes of what it was like up to that point. And honestly, by the time I graduated and had all of those experiences, I realized that I enjoyed the PR part more because, I always tell people internships tell you what you do want to do and what you don't want to do. And I had that experience early enough on before my senior year in college where I actually got to go out on a daily basis with the TV reporters and deal with the PR people. And I really enjoyed that. And so that kind of opened my eyes to the PR side of things. And, that's kind of how it all just ended up evolving from there.
Yeah. That's funny. I don't know if you knew this, but I went to school to be a journalist as well. And in fact, I did want to be an anchor. I wanted to be the next Diane Sawyer.
Oh, I love it. I didn't know that about you.
Yeah. And after I was...
Show.
What's that?
We need to start our own show.
Exactly. Bring it back,
Ryan.
Right?
Yeah, like live with Kelly and Ryan, but
totally
live with Jeniffer and Marika. Yeah,
that'll be our next thing for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think we need to tell our listeners that you're also a travel writer. So you did end up using some of the writing know-how from college. I'm wildly curious. You're a wife, and in fact, you're in business with your husband. You have 3 kids. You're a travel writer. You also just launched Author to Influencer Accelerator, a program that we'll talk about in a little bit. And you're a publicist. How in the world do you manage and balance all of that?
Well, I work 7 days a week.
Of course
but
you do.
Funny thing about self-employment.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. I don't really mind it because I love what I do on both sides of it. And, I also have the flexibility to, get some relaxation here and there when it works for my schedule. So working 7 days a week for me isn't, as arduous as it might be for somebody else. So, and luckily, my kids are a little bit older now. So, I couldn't have done all of this when they were little people. That would not have worked.
And your youngest is 12 now. Is that right? Yeah.
And I have one in college.
Wow. I can't even believe she's in college. That kind of blows my mind, actually.
It does me too on a daily basis.
You're like, what's happening?
But now you're no longer a taxi service.
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
Well,
and my middle child also has wheels because he's 16. So that has been great because he's the soccer player and he gets himself to school and back and, to soccer and all that good stuff. So I really only have one that I have to taxi around.
Nice. Well, tell us, what is it like having your own business and working alongside your husband?
How long do you have?
We got all day, baby.
Yeah. I mean,
and I think it's different for, I think you're the kind of couple who either that brings you closer together and it strengthens your relationship, or you just can't do it.
Or it drives a wedge between it.
Right. Or you just can't do it. Yeah. So
anymore.
But for you and Doug, how has the process been? Because you opened up PR by the Book together, right?
Mm-hmm. And that was a little over 17 years ago. And, so I don't even remember what it was like not working with him, honestly. I mean, it's just been so long that we have that I don't remember the difference. And so, honestly, of course, it has its challenges because for one thing, you don't turn it off. You don't leave the office and, then come home and tell me about your day or, let's talk about something else. It's like you're always talking about the business, it seems like. And so I think that that's a challenge, just, have time where you're not talking about work. I mean, we actually had to come up with a rule for ourselves that we didn't talk about work at the dinner table, because we would find ourselves with our 3 kids sitting around the dinner table and something would come up and we'd be talking about work, and we couldn't do that anymore. So
do you think the kids were irritated by that? Did they show some displeasure and like it's always work with you guys?
Dad.
Yes, exactly. Yes. They were like, let's talk about us.
Right, of course.
So, it definitely has its challenges. I do think that we complement each other really well on running a business together, because he has a business background and a marketing degree. And so, he can handle the business side of things, where I like to be more creative and be out on the front and be generating ideas and working with people. And so we balance each other out in that way.
You're the great connector, Marika. You connect people.
And that's one of my passions. Just I've always, and it's funny because our daughter we say she's my mini me, and she
totally is
like me with that. I mean, it's so funny because it's like watching my 18, 19-year-old self all over again in so many different ways. But she's like that. She loves connecting people. She loves bringing people together. She loves being the organizer and making sure it all happens. And so, yeah, it's funny because now I'm watching her with those traits. But yeah, it's just definitely a passion that I have. And I actually can't turn it off. At one point.
Well, that's good though. That way it wouldn't be authentic if that were the case, if you were turning it on and off. And it is authentic. Sure.
That's good because it plays out in my career, it plays out in my personal life. It's just something that brings me joy. So, yeah.
I mean, you're a book publicist, for goodness sake. Like that's what you do, right?
Right. I connect the author to the media outlet and then thereby connecting a reader to a great book that they would like to read.
I'm curious, what is like the thing that gets you the most excited about a book? Like, can you see a book or read a book and say, this is going to be a bestseller?
That's an interesting question.
Or maybe bestsellers aren't what get you excited. Maybe that's 2 questions. Like what gets you excited may not be the bestseller.
Well, I can say what gets me excited is, if I come across a query that comes into PR by the book that really does touch on some of my personal interests, so that might be related to travel or, in terms of novels, like I love just an easy breezy romantic comedy or, something that's just fun to sit and just check out mentally and read.
Right.
If it's, something related to parenting or, raising kids, those types of things very much interest me personally. I also just in general really love working on lifestyle books also that can be anything from cookbooks to, health and wellness, things like that. I would never, ever say that I would be able to look at a book and say that's going to be a bestseller because
we never know, do we?
We never know. And, being in this business, I mean, from the time I started until now, is close to, like 22, 23 years. And I've had situations many times in the past where I take on a project that I think will be a slam dunk, in terms of garnering media and garnering a certain type of media. And then it ends up, for one reason or another, it might be a variety of factors. It could be the timing. It could be, different things related to that. But for one reason or another, it's like hitting your head up against a wall, trying to get the media to say yes. And then on the flip side of that, I've had several projects where initially I looked at it and thought this is going to be a decline. But then I talked to the author and something came out in that conversation and they almost sold themselves to me. And I thought, okay, there's an audience out there for this. It might not be a massive audience, but there's the audience and I know where to find it. and then it ends up being a runaway, I mean, it's just
right. Yeah. And you almost turned it down. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In that vein, what would you say is your greatest triumph? Do you have, or can you drop names? I mean, is that allowed here?
Well, I'll tell you, one of my first most exciting campaigns that I had was early on in my career. And it really was a game changer, and I can tell you why. But it was a project that I took on that kind of like what we were just talking about. One of my publisher clients at the time said, okay, we've got this concept that's coming out next year that I really want you to handle the publicity on. And it's going to be a Bible for teen girls that looks like a fashion magazine.
Oh my gosh.
I thought, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? And it ended up being a phenomenally successful campaign. And it was really a fun campaign to watch of how media breeds media, because one of the very first hits I got was a review. And this is kind of a funny story to tell now that we're in 2020, because daily newspapers are totally different now. But one of the first media hits I got was a review and corresponding story in the Detroit Free Press, which the funny thing about that is there was no tie-in to Detroit, first and foremost.
Wow. Huh.
And so it was a huge article that got picked up on The Wire and got syndicated and ended up appearing in something like 35 newspapers within a few days. And that was the impetus for seeing this just go gangbusters,
Wow.
And there was a lot of top tier media hits to follow. And in the end, all of the impressions counted something like 750 media hits, which would include all of those different daily news. I'm not talking about people that it reached. I'm talking about media hits. So,
right.
Each radio interview is one media hit.
That's a lot. I mean, that seems to me like that's pretty big. That's pretty broad.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that was really fun because I was really early on in my career, and it really was an impetus for PR by the Book really taking off with a lot of publishers at the time. And so that was really fun to see. And, we've worked on projects that, we had some campaigns with Patagonia Books that were really fun to see those play out and see that niche audience really build and become very much a very large audience, from something that somebody might look at and go, oh, this is for, mountain climbers, or this is for surfers or whatever. There's not a huge audience. But to see those books hit really well just because of media hits that we garnered. And so, working on a lot of those books was really fun. We've had cookbooks that one of my favorite cookbooks is Ready or Not, that is written by Michelle Tam, who founded Nom Nom Paleo. And that was really fun to play alongside that campaign because she's a master marketer, and she just really knew how to get the job done on her side of things, with events and newsletter and recipes and doing a great television interview and all of those pieces that made our job really fun.
Sure. Yeah.
To be able, to get the corresponding media for.
I think that's a really important point for our author listeners. You don't just hire someone to do it for you and it's successful. It's really a group effort. And you've said a couple things right now that I think are important to note. One, an author has to be really excited about their project and be able to pitch it in such a way that it gets other people excited. And I think that can be so challenging, that elevator pitch. But it goes beyond the pitch, being involved and being on the ground and setting up those events. And so many times I see authors who are passionate about their project, but for some reason they don't realize they need to carry that through in everything they do.
Yeah, and it's truly tough because at the point of having created the book, at the end, they've already spent potentially years and years and years on it.
Right. They're tired
So
already.
I am done with this. Just get it out.
Yeah. I just want to pay someone else to do it.
And, that's interesting to look at it also because when they hire people like, you all, if they're working on branding, building website, getting all their branding situated, and then they hire a publicist, and, that stands to reason that you would be hiring someone to do it all for you, but it's really not when you look at it holistically. That, if somebody comes to us and says, okay, I need these 8 things handled by PR by the book. And it's kind of like, well, we do 4 of those, but these 4 are really your responsibility, or they're your publisher's responsibility. Because things like we don't go out and find the blurbs, and we don't submit for awards, and we don't do very much event planning either. But we're really focused on the media relations piece of it. So we're really focused on the publicity aspect of PR. So, within PR, there are a lot of things that can fall under that. But the publicity is really, where we shine in terms of getting those media opportunities. And so, there are some things that we do offer just so we can be kind of more of a one-stop shop, like social media, for instance. We do offer that for the people who need it to complement their publicity campaign, but it's an add-on service. It's not something that we do for everybody.
Sure.
And so an author really does have to be ready to kind of do their part and, really get in there and be present and respond and write a contributed article if needed, and,
create
be
content.
engaging. Yeah.
And have clear messaging. I think that's a big thing, is clear messaging from the get-go. I will say, here I'm a branding and digital marketing strategist. And most of the time when someone first meets me, they know very little about me, but they've done just a little bit of research, they introduce me as a publicist. This happens to me all the time. And I have to say, no, not a publicist. Not at all. But people don't really understand what a publicist is. I think they think it's a marketer. The publicist is the person who's going to do everything for you, right? Not the case.
Yeah. Well, I'm giggling because when I first started as a book publicist, my entire extended family thought I was a publisher. And
of course,
say, which I laugh at this. I'm like, oh my gosh, now that I know really what a publisher does, they were giving me a whole lot of credit. But yeah, I would always have to correct them and say, nope, not a publisher, but a publicist. So yeah, I mean, what was your question related to that?
No, I was just commenting that people just don't really know what a publicist is, and they certainly don't understand the difference between publicity and marketing.
Yeah. Well, I wrote an article years ago called The Publicity Puzzle that I would say was the most popular thing I wrote as a publicist, because it really took on a life of its own, and it had several different reiterations out there. But it was essentially explaining what a book publicist is and does. And because kind of going back to our initial conversation, I mean, even me graduating from a university never even knew that was a job for people. Like I didn't know that existed. And so it's understandable that people would need some education on that. But, basically, in terms of what is a book publicist, I mean, we are out there trying to rally the troops on the media side so that we build interest around a person's brand, around their book, around their messaging, who they are, so that we can obtain those media opportunities for them, thereby getting them exposure in the media, which hopefully, really gets them on a path to reaching their goals, whatever that might be. For some, it's book sales. For others, it's just increasing their name recognition or getting speaking opportunities or, trying to find a publisher for the next book. I mean, it could be a wide variety of things.
Mm-hmm.
But hopefully, the goal is that the press that we're able to get for them, people call it earned media. That's a term, versus advertising, which it is not. And so, through that earned media that they can work towards their goals,
Right.
whatever it might be.
So, okay, here's something that's ironic. On television, whenever you see whether it's a entertainment publicist or a book publicist, they always depict, the television in Hollywood always depicts publicists as this person who like manages the life of this talent, right? And the talent's always like super dramatic, like they're an alcoholic or they're like something crazy is happening and they have to get them to the event and like, So I guess my question is like, what's the craziest thing that you've ever had happen with a client? Okay, or if you can even share the tale.
Well, I'm going to have to think on that for a second, but I'll tell you that what it makes me think of is one of my favorite book series that I ever read because it was just so fun and easy breezy was a series called The Publicist.
I've read it.
Have you?
I love The Publicist. I absolutely loved that series. I thought it was fantastic.
Well, and that is that's the
that
example
is so funny.
that you're giving. Like
Totally.
that's that publicist's life. And it's funny because I've seen a handful of Hallmark movies or whatever kind of movie where there's a publicist, and you're right. I mean, that person is like running around trying to
it's
get
like the handler.
trying to get the client's life together. And that's not what we do. I mean,
that's not real.
It's not. And honestly, for a celebrity, celebrities do have publicists that travel with them sometimes still. But in the big scheme of things, when you look at the book industry and the book world, it's not so common anymore for an author to go on this, 10 city book tour where they have to have a publicist coming along with them. Yeah. So, it's just most of the time our work is done in our office behind the computer on the phone, that type of thing.
Not very sexy, I'm just going to say.
No, it's not. It's not running around in high heels and a pencil skirt and
right, as one would think.
Lots of sweatpants and Uggs.
Yes.
Totally.
Yoga pants are
all the way.
Yes.
That's awesome. Yeah, I sort of think of Samantha Jones on Sex and the City. That's the publicist. I forget what kind of a publicist she was, but her life was very glamorous. So I never thought about being a publicist because for me, it just seemed almost heartbreaking that you just don't know how much success you're going to have. But that's publishing in a nutshell. Like you just don't know if this book is going to do well. So, we build brands and websites because we know that there's going to be a website at the end of the project. And the goal is very simple. Whereas publicity is so almost ethereal. You just don't know how it's going to go or how it's going to be perceived.
It's like gambling.
I was going to say, we live life on the edge, don't we?
Totally, you do. Yeah.
I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about that, but because
it's probably best not to.
I'm not a risk taker by nature. I'm just not. Like that's not. Nobody that knows me would describe me as a risk taker. But to your point, it going into each and every campaign, you don't know what's going to come out. But when I'm asked a question related to that, when I'm talking to potential clients, I point towards the fact that number one, the people on our team, all of our publicists, we're all very experienced. We've all been doing this for, more than a decade. Many of us 2 decades. And so we don't have publicists on our team that just graduated from college and are trying to figure out how to get media hits. And so, I have confidence in the fact that if it can be done for a book, we can do it, and that's the only question is, can it be done? And because we don't have control over the media, obviously. And we certainly don't know, what the news cycles are going to be. And, those are sometimes challenges for us as publicists if all they want to talk about is politics and Trump and, the Super Bowl halftime show or whatever. It's like, we're trying to get a word in edgewise with our poor little author over here. And, sometimes it's just not going to happen because they're not Trump, and so, it is one of those things where we don't know exactly what will become of it, but it's also really exciting because a lot of the people that we're working with, they're not celebrities and they don't have name recognition before they come to us. And so they come to us and we find their audience for them. And that's the exciting part of it is nobody knew about them prior to them working with us. And then we're introducing them to audiences of different shapes and forms. And thereby they're finding these readers that will discover them and buy their books and be their fans, hopefully. And so that's the exciting part of it.
That is exciting. Yeah, because the readers are there. You're just putting, they're looking for those people. So you're bringing it to the readers.
Have you ever had any campaign that was either decimated by the news cycle or just completely caught fire because of what happened just fortuitously?
Well, I will tell you 4 years ago, we had an author who had been given an opportunity for one of the national morning shows and had gotten over to New York to be on Good Morning America and had a cancellation the day before because of it was during the presidential election season of the fall, which the funny thing is that is really an entire year now. It's like it's not even just October or November or whatever like it maybe used to be. I mean, if it's an election year, you're hearing it all year long. I read The Skim each morning to get my daily news, and it's a really fun, kind of sometimes irreverent news source, but it basically encapsulates the news of the day in quick little bites, and the lead story almost every single day is political. And to me, that's a case in point that, all year long, and really it's been all for 4 years. Now it seems like, anything that's political will come first. But on the flip side of that, if that has ever really helped and kind of been a game changer, I'm trying to think of an example related to that, but I can tell you that we've taken on books because they relate to politics, and we knew it was timely. And so, so for instance, right now we're working on a book called The GOP's Lost Decade, and it's written by a man named Jim Renacci, and he was a congressman in Ohio and really got into politics for all the right reasons. He was a small business owner where, some things politically had caused him to kind of have a crash with his business. And he just saw a lot of things that he could get in and help with. And so went into it, with the best of intentions. And then, as you can imagine, got in there and found how extremely frustrating it was to not be able to make things happen, and after reading just the synopsis of the book, when it came across my desk, I almost started feeling like internal anxiety for him because I thought I could not last 24 hours in a role like that because I would my head would explode. I'm somebody who and it helps that I run my own business, but I have an idea and then I want to make it happen right then.
Right.
Right. I'm just I'm go, 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 go. And so, I almost started to feel all this anxiety for him right away. But we took that book on because this is more of what we call internally an experts campaign. So the book is already out. So it's not a book launch campaign. So he had a situation where the book came out last year, but there were some situations kind of behind the scenes where they just didn't do any publicity outreach. And so you hear those stories all the time. Sometimes something
very
going
common
on in
for sure.
personal life or an illness or something in their family, and they look up and that window has passed. But we call this an experts campaign because it's basically taking what that person has to talk about, their expertise, and finding those possibilities for them within the media atmosphere for them to kind of come in and be a talking head. So what we know is that, the media exists to, entertain, inform, inspire, all of those things, their audiences. And so they're looking for people who can come in and fill those holes and be those talking heads, so to speak. And so his campaign is like that, where, we knew that we were going to be able to find him opportunities based on his experience, what he had to say, what he has to say, and thereby what's in the book. But that's not what we lead with. We don't lead with the book when we're pitching him. We lead with the fact that, don't you want to get a guy like this on your show and be able to talk about the real kind of behind the scenes of what's going on in DC?
I talk to my clients about this a lot. Are you selling you or your book? And in this case, you're promoting the author. He's the product, if you will.
And the book is the business card.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
I have a question for you. If an author is seeking out a publicist, what should they have in place before they come to you?
So a lot of the things that you all provide, actually, a really great website. They have to know enough about when their book is coming out for us to be able to put together a timeline. So what I mean by that is, if somebody comes to us and says, I've got this book in my heart and I've gotten it on paper, but I don't really know if I'm going to self-publish or try to find an agent or yada, yada, yada. There's not a whole lot we can do at that point, because we really need to understand the timing of when a book will be released to be able to put together a logical timeline and proposal.
And what is that? What is the lead time, the ideal lead time for you from the date they retain you to the launch date?
So if somebody is planning to have advanced review copies available, we want to get those out 4 to 6 months prior to pub date. And to meet that window of, the book trade industry and other top tier media outlets that require that long lead time. So, and I would say in terms of the clients that we work with, it's probably about a 50-50 split. 50% of the people do go that route, and 50% of the people skip that step because they're self-publishing and they just go straight to short lead media outreach. And if that's the case, we want to be working on a project a minimum of 2 months prior to the publication date. So that, because there's this runway, the things that have to happen between when we start and when the media starts hitting to the public. And so it falls in that range, somewhere between 2 to 6 months prior to a book coming out is when we typically come on board. Now, that's not to say that's when the contract is signed. A lot of our projects, the contract will get signed, anywhere from 1 to 3 months before we're actually starting to work on a project.
You have to be able to schedule it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
I think this is a good lead-in to talk about your Author to Influencer Accelerator program. Can you talk a little bit about that?
We're so excited, and you've participated. I'll tell people how in a second, but this idea came about a couple of years ago, really based on the fact that I was talking to people week in, week out that could not they were not in a position to hire a publicist. Either it was budget or it was, one reason or another, they just couldn't, as much as they wanted to, it didn't matter what I would say, they couldn't. And so we're always trying to say
they just didn't have the budget for it, really, right?
Yeah, that's typically the reason. So, we started thinking about, what I was about to say is, we do try to stay ahead of the curve of what's coming down the pike and staying relevant and all that good stuff. And so this idea started percolating a couple of years ago. And it was one of those things where you're working so hard on everybody else's projects that you really don't sit and do the work that needs to happen for your own. And so we thought about it.
We don't know.
I don't know what you're talking about.
We don't know anything about that. Yeah.
I'm sure you don't. There's never been anything that falls under that category for you. But for a year and a half, we talked a lot about it and we had lots of thoughts about it. But it wasn't until about 6 months ago that we really sat down and started putting the pieces in place. And so Author to Influencer Accelerator is a membership community where people can come in and basically be set up for coursework throughout the life of, let's say, we kind of think that an ideal length of somebody being in the group would be about 12 months. But it takes somebody from preparation. We built a success path that has 5 steps. The first step is preparation, all the way to the 5th step that's promotion. And so the second is platform development, product is in there, and then planning and promotion. And so we spent a lot of time really distilling down what does an author need to know to, ace it, basically, to go from start to finish and ultimately be able to handle their own promotion and not have to hire a publicist. And so I like to say that it's like getting an advanced degree in book publicity through this course. So people come in and they join with a monthly fee that's really inexpensive, and that we already have a library of resources already in the platform when people come in. We just launched a few weeks ago, but we had 10 lessons already in the platform for people to start learning. And so, and the lessons fall into different categories. There's expert interviews, like I interviewed you on
which was awesome.
Website. Yes. And then we have workshops that are led by me. So it's basically me teaching a class on a certain topic. We have success stories where I talk to somebody who's really done things the right way in a certain area and how they've benefited from that. So people can learn from that. We have member spotlights where we'll pull out a member and we'll talk about their particular situation and what
that's
they
a great idea. Yeah, that's nice. So then it's really, the community piece of it is really coming to life.
Right.
That's great.
And then we also have office hours with me, where it's basically an open office hour where people can come and bring their questions. That if they were doing hourly consultation with me, I like to say that if somebody only used the office hour component of Author to Influencer,
it'd be totally worth it.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's just
awesome.
One offering. And so, we've launched it. It's up and running. Every Tuesday, a new lesson is dropped. So, for instance, today we dropped our first in a 7-part media training series. And so that's fun and exciting. But we have topics that range from, the preparation that you need to do when your book is just right there in your heart and you haven't even started yet, to building up that platform and everything that entails. And in terms of product, like making sure that your product is top notch. One of my favorite topics related to that is, something that's near and dear to your heart, which is book cover design and having a stellar book cover. And then we talk about all the planning that goes into what you need to do to execute that publicity campaign. So everything from building a tribe to setting up a virtual book tour or setting up a physical book tour, getting your social media content ready to go. And then, of course, under promotion, I mean, it's everything about knowing how to write the right pieces to get media attention, to actually, finding those contacts, and how do you pitch in order to land those opportunities. So, yeah, it's
that's awesome.
a lot.
That's a lot of work. Good job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's ongoing work, but we've been working on it for 6 months now. So we have a lot of content that's already ready to go. And then, we're just staying engaged with our group all throughout the week and talking. Oh, there's a private Facebook group also where we're engaging with everybody.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's so great because Monkey See Media has been in business for 16 years. And one of the things that makes me the most sad is I want to help everyone. I want to answer all their questions and I want to guide them, but that doesn't mean it's always a good fit or they can afford us. And, having another option is it's a really beautiful gift to publishing, and independent publishing in particular, which is, what 1.2 million books were independently published last year alone. And that doesn't include the traditional market. Right. So, there's a massive market. Most people you meet have a book in them, which leads me to my next question. Marika, do you have a book in you?
No.
No?
No. I like writing articles, and that's as long of a form as I like writing. So
short, sweet, to the point.
Yeah. Really. I'm verbose, but I don't need to write a book. But people have asked me that from my very, very early days as a book publicist, when I was a baby publicist, as I like.
When are you going to write a book? Yeah.
I mean,
a baby publicist.
So 20 years now, people have been asking that question off and on. But no, like I said, I like writing, but I like writing press material and magazine articles and blog posts and things of that sort. And, in and out.
Well, you're
places to go.
You're fast paced. Yeah, you always have been. And I want to tell our listeners, Marika is actually going to be leading a panel and appearing at the San Diego Writers Festival on April 4th, at the Coronado Public Library here in San Diego, and is also one of our advisory board members. We're super excited that you're coming out to the festival.
I'm excited too. Yes.
It's going to be awesome.
Be a great time.
So I have two final questions. One's a little longer. What are your top 3 pieces of advice for new authors looking to make their mark in the publishing world?
Well, I would say first and foremost, to make sure that they're clear on their branding, which people can work with you on that, and really know, who they are, who they're wanting to reach, and why now. Getting all very clear on those pieces. And also, and alongside that, this kind of falls under that number 1 still. It's like the genie with 3 wishes. Like, I don't want to move on to number 2 yet. I'm still on number 1. So along with that, having a great website to display who they are and what their branding is. Because what I always tell people is that, we're really good at knowing how to pitch something, and we have the contacts and we have experience doing that. But if we get a journalist on the hook, so to speak, and they're interested, one of the first things they're going to do is go look up this person for their website, their social media. And if it's not contemporary enough, clean enough, interesting enough, then our pitch sometimes could be just dead in the water because they're not, displaying, they're not putting their best foot forward.
Right.
So, all of that kind of needs to happen on the front end. And moving into kind of the planning that they can do is just really figuring out what their goals are and what's next also, so knowing what do they hope to accomplish with writing the book in the first place? Right. Where are they going next? What do they hope ends up happening from the publicity campaign? Where do they see themselves going through, the media opportunities that they get. And I guess my third one would be just making themselves accessible and easy to work with and engaging enough so that, they can participate in their publicity campaign. So whether that means being able to make themselves available for a broadcast interview, or, we get an opportunity for them to maybe contribute an op-ed somewhere, being able to put that together, or even as simple as, we spend a lot of time reading through these media queries every day of things that people are writing about. So we find one, and they're all very time sensitive, and to just get a 1 or 2 sentence quote from a client to say, what would you say about this particular topic in your own words, and having them get that back to us quickly, that's all part of, making themselves available.
That's huge.
To have a good publicity campaign. Yeah.
I have so many authors who say, I don't want to have to do anything. And it's heartbreaking. Like Chad said earlier, they've written the book, they feel like they've done the work. And then when I tell them, actually, the hard work is just starting. Yeah, people are kind of shocked. But to be invested and be part of the process is the only way to make it a successful campaign.
Right. Because nobody can do their job for them, really, when it comes down to what their piece is, I mean, we can't be them. We can't do the interview for them. We can't, we can kind of be the puppeteer behind the scenes. And, it's not to say that we haven't ghost written an article for a client here and there, or help them develop, some social media content, but, it really needs to have their fingerprint on it for sure.
For sure.
All right. I get the final question.
All right, what you got?
Okay.
So last night, Jennifer and I were discussing desert island books and albums and what have you. And her premise is that the desert island book, though it may not necessarily be the best book she's ever read, but it's going to be one that she could spend the rest of her life with. So it's not going to be War and Peace, because who in the hell wants to read that over and over again? So what are your 3 desert island books?
Oh my goodness. You should
Only 3.
You need to give this to me ahead of time so I can.
I know, we totally dropped it.
Well, that's not fun, is it?
Okay. I'm going to start with my favorite book that I read in 2019, which was a book called You Are My Brother by Judith Knotts. And she is a columnist at the Austin American-Statesman, which is the daily newspaper here in Austin, and writes about homelessness. And her book was a compilation of her articles that have appeared over the years. And it absolutely changed my perspective on the issue of homelessness.
Now you're stuck on a desert island with this book.
You got to read this over and over again. Yeah.
But I could because
wow, it's got to be good.
These are short. They're articles, I mean, they're 750 words or whatever, but every time you read one of them, you can get a different perspective on the story.
Okay.
And they're all real life stories. And so as I read it, I got chills. I imagined what this person looked like and what they might be feeling at that particular time. So yeah, I feel like I could read that over and over again.
All right. 2 more then.
That's a great title too. You Are My Brother. I like it.
Yeah. Okay. So how about I take along the Publicist series?
Yeah. Such a good, it's so fun. It's got romance. It's got excitement.
That's candy for your brain.
It is though, but that's what I'm saying. If you're on a desert island, you need something that is an escape.
But can you sustain your brain on candy?
That was sort of the conversation last night is, do you take something that's like a great literary work?
Right.
Which for me would be Crime and Punishment, not War and Peace, just so we're clear.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, and, some of my favorite books that I think would be amazing as desert island books, and I'm not naming like one particular one, but are the National Geographic books that are full of the coolest little golden nuggets of trivia and information. And they're kind of for all ages, all different ages. But yeah, those are super fun to just sit there and think, oh my gosh, I had no idea that was that.
So your Desert Island book is an encyclopedia set.
Yeah, that's brilliant, actually. You got the whole
all right,
world.
Fine, I'll go with that.
That can
You just like short, easy to digest things.
Right, because even if I'm on a desert island, I must have things that I have to do and
That's
get
true.
done, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So,
You're still going to be
There's
productive.
some fishing to be done. You're going to need to feed yourself.
There's some palapa building happening. Absolutely. Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
I was going to say that somebody was asking me recently about if there was a book or a series that I could remember literally like staying up throughout the night, because I also like, as busy as I am, I like my sleep. And so, if I'm reading until 1 or 2 or 3 in the morning, I really like this book.
It better be a good book. Yeah.
It better be. And the funny thing is that the first thing I could think of was years ago when I was reading the Hunger Games series.
Oh, yeah.
And I could not put those books down to fall asleep. And when I finally would, and the funny thing is I was reading them prior to as basically, to make sure that they were appropriate for my daughter at the time, who was in middle school at the time, I believe. And so I was like, you know what, I'm going to read it first just to make sure. And, and I could not put them down. And when I would put them down and fall asleep, I would be replaying the scenes in my head, all night long. Which I don't know if that's good or bad, but
right, exactly.
You find yourself standing in tribute for.
Yep, volunteering as tribute over and over.
Well, Marika, thank you so much. Is there anything that you want to close with, that you want to tell our listeners?
Well, I definitely would love to tell them to go check out authortoinfluencer.com, because all the good little nitty-gritty nuggets are on there about, for people who are interested in just learning the ropes and DIYing their publicity. And then also, just really kind of leaving people with, I guess, a little piece of inspiration in that, there's an audience for every book out there, in my opinion. And, that's one of the things that really stuck with me when I very, very, very first got into book publicity in my 20s, and still sticks with me now, that, there's a reader for every book. And as publicists, our job is to find those readers through media outlets. And we take it seriously. We put a lot of heart and soul into it. And, some days you got to have really thick skin as a book publicist.
Right.
But, we like to be the little engine that could, and just keep, chugging up that hill.
Yeah.
And finding that audience.
Well, and we appreciate what you do. Yeah, we appreciate all the work you do for our clients. It's funny, Chad and I have never talked about what we do in our day job, which is Monkey See Media and websites. But, it's always such a good feeling when we finish a project and we get to send them to someone who we know is going to put the same love and attention and care into that campaign. Well, thank you. Thank you for your time.
Absolutely. Anytime, we can just talk and talk and talk.
We totally could. We'll just have to go to dinner.
We don't even need to record it necessarily.
So you can learn more about Marika at prbythebook.com. Follow her on Twitter. Her handle is at Marika Flatt. That's MarikaFlatt. And again, check out her Author to Influencer Accelerator program at authortoinfluencer.com. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please remember to subscribe and rate The Premise wherever you get your podcast. We appreciate your love. Until next week, thanks for listening.
Are you an author with a story to tell, but you're just not sure how to get that story out?
Guess what? You don't have to do it alone. Marni Friedman is an incredible writing coach. She offers personalized support and expertise to guide you from a kernel of an idea to completion. Visit marnifriedman.com to learn more. That's Marnifreedman.com.
This episode is brought to you by Monkey See Media, a small boutique design firm offering award-winning websites, book cover designs, book trailers, and photography services.
And full disclosure, we love what we do. Chad and I founded Monkey See Media in 2004, and we're still going strong.
Visit monkeyseemedia.com. That's MONKEY, the letter C, media.com to see how we can help you promote your book, build a powerful online presence.
What else you got, Chad?
Let's see. We've got the San Diego Writers Festival. There are many writers. And they're a proud sponsor of our Premise podcast as well.
And it's going to be awesome. This year's keynote is Scott Gimple. He's the head writer of The Walking Dead. And the festival is free. It's open to the public. There's going to be educational panels and workshops, famous authors, up-and-coming authors, kids and teen programming, and live theater performances. Oh, and there's music. Oh, and there's food.
Oh, but wait, there's more. You also get a copy of our home game.
You're silly. But wait, there is more. There will be literary agents taking pitches from authors looking to get their books published. The festival is about building community and celebrating storytelling of all kinds. It's happening April 4th, 2020 at the Coronado Public Library.